y'all, and welcome to the Everyday Truths podcast. My name is Sherry, and I am the creator of Everyday Truths, where we work to make faith real and relevant so that we can live it out in our everyday lives. And today, I am joined by my good friend, Pastor Andrew Richardson, and we are going to be breaking down the topic of evangelism, a difficult topic that we're going to break down to ground level, and we are going to uncomplicate together. I know this is going to be a blessing to you, so let's get into it. Well, hey, Andrew.
What is up? Hey, Sherry.
I'm glad you're here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, here again. I think you're the first repeat on the podcast.
What?
Yeah.
Do I get like a medal or
You're just a sucker
something?
And just, your schedule's not very busy because you're
the-
not that important.
You're the least busy person, so we can get...
No, certainly
Yeah.
not. Andrew
Yeah.
is the youth pastor at City Church San Antonio. Somebody that was actually a student of mine when I was in student ministry. We got to work together for a long time. Somebody I admire and love doing ministry with and love recording podcasts with. And so excited that you're here.
That's so nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. I have to say enough nice things to counteract the mean things
Yeah.
I'll say later. So
Yeah.
perfect. So we're going to play
All
a
right.
game. This is something we've done at the beginning of most of the episodes. The deal is nobody knows
No idea.
what the game is going to be. And so Andrew has no idea. And I spent a long time developing this game. And so if it doesn't go well, it's your fault.
It's my fault.
Perfect. Yeah. And so Andrew is a big Spurs fan.
For sure.
For sure. In fact, true story.
Yeah.
We were at camp one year at youth camp. Andrew left because the Spurs were in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, you're leaving out some details.
No, that we don't need any more
Yeah.
details. Andrew left
The
because
camp was also 10 minutes from my house.
that's
Yeah.
because
You made it seem like I drove 3 hours.
I can't give you a hard time because my kids are named after Spurs players.
Oh.
Not really, but yes.
Really?
Technically Parker. So, true story. Our son's name is Finley, and there was a Spurs player named Michael Finley. He wasn't really named after him,
Yeah.
but we
It
got
just works.
asked that a lot. And so then when I was pregnant with Parker, we kept joking like we were going to name her
did not know
Duncan.
that.
We were going to name her
Ginobili.
Manu, Ginobili. We were going to name her all these things. And so one day as the joke progressed, Wes and I I think I said Parker, and we were like, oh my gosh, that's her name.
That's awesome.
Like we had already picked a name. We renamed her.
What?
She was 6 months old. No, I was pregnant with her. We changed.
We went through all that. It just means a lot to us.
Yeah, it's just
We
really
have to go change
Tony.
the name.
But yeah. Anyway, so big Spurs fan.
Yes.
And a cornerstone of the Spurs organization is Coach Greg Popovich.
Yes.
And so today I made up a game, and it's called Pop or a Prophet.
I
So
love where
I'm
this
going to
is
give
going.
you different quotes, and you have to decide if Coach Pop said it,
Okay.
or if it's something from a biblical prophet. Now, this was not an easy undertaking because Pop and prophets do not speak in the same way at all.
Yeah.
And so I had to take some liberty with some like phrasings and things like that.
Okay.
And so some of it you have to kind of capture like the sentiment of it.
Okay.
So let's start here. There's no purpose in talking about the past. It doesn't do us any good whatsoever.
That's Pop.
It was Pop.
That's Pop.
That was very good.
Actually, No, imagine.
No,
I
that would
just
be
knew-
so
imagine.
amazing.
Oh, man.
Sometimes it is necessary to speak because so many people either seem to be afraid or, more sinister, are unwilling to face things, to go and worry about their own situations.
I think that's Prophet.
It is Pop.
That's just a lot of words for Pop.
No,
That's a
right?
long-
That was tough. But he's very social action oriented. And so
Oh,
like
true.
that's, yeah. All right,
Yeah.
here we go. People are hurting, really hurting, yet they cover it up saying it's all okay. It's not okay.
This is hard.
I made it hard on purpose.
I know that Prophet wouldn't say okay, but you're saying that if it's...
Sometimes I went to like paraphrase kind of stuff. We're catching the sentiment. It's like how they would say it if they said it today.
Okay. Can I have a language of origin, please? I'm kidding. That's Prophet.
That is a prophet.
Nice.
That's
Okay.
Jeremiah. Let's
Okay.
see. They
Okay.
have been put on the scales and they have been found wanting.
That feels Prophet.
That is a prophet.
Is it Jeremiah?
It is
Feels-
Daniel. It's
Daniel.
Daniel. All
Okay.
right. The measure of who we are is how we react to something that doesn't go our way.
That feels very much like pop.
That is pop.
Hey.
You're doing really good. Let go
Let's
of the
keep going.
past. Let's stop revisiting what's already done.
That's a prophet.
Man,
Yeah.
I wanted this to be so much more difficult.
This is good.
All right.
I'm just racking it up.
Okay. You have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the group and not individuals.
I feel like that's a prophet.
I'm so happy I finally got you. That's pop.
I knew it. It could go either way, you know?
All right.
Oh, man. I've gotten two wrong. I think I've got it now.
Whatever you find to do, give it everything you've got.
That's pop.
That is from Ecclesiastes.
What? That's not a prophet.
What is Ecclesiastes? Come on, seminary.
It's wisdom literature. Is it?
I think I made up the game, and so I get to make the rules.
I think you're starting to realize that.
I know this is really man. I worked so hard on this game.
I can pretend to get this one wrong if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's try.
But did I do this one? Let go of the past. Stop revisiting what's already done.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Who was it?
It was Pop.
Isaiah. Well, you did really well.
You
I'm
actually
really
started
frustrated.
getting me towards the end. No, you did. Like towards the end, I will say every one of them I struggled internally.
So today's topic is an interesting one. We've been talking about uncomplicating faith because faith can feel very complicated, or maybe more specifically, living out your faith. We're going to be talking about evangelism, a very fancy word, but that really isn't that complicated. And so we're going to jump into that. And so first, can we just define evangelism up top? Like what we're talking about, if somebody's maybe not familiar with the word, what is evangelism?
I would say very simply, evangelism is sharing the good news of Jesus. And that can look like many different things. That can look like how Jesus has affected you, or how you've seen Jesus impact others in your life. It can show in many different ways. So that's just kind of the root of what evangelism is. I mean, there is the idea of what's called the gospel, and the gospel is just the good news of Jesus. And it's
meaning
sharing.
that
it's that
God sent his son who came and died for our sins, who lived a perfect life. And so the good news that you can be redeemed, that you can be forgiven, that you can have a relationship with God, that good news of Jesus. So evangelism is sharing that with others. And if we want to go even more ground level, it's talking to people about Jesus.
Yes. Well, because if the gospel is the good news, then the good news impacts like a lot of different areas. So sharing that good news is going to look different than what you would just think the gospel, the plain sense of what people think it is. But I love that explanation. It's just the good news of Jesus coming to this earth. And what's great about it is it's for everyone. So that means that the evangelism is talking to anyone. There's not only specific people that you are allowed to talk to or not talk to.
Yeah, people who are open to the faith and people who aren't. People who will walk into the doors of a church and those who won't. People that we get along with, people that we don't get along with, people that we know and people that we don't know. And the list could go on and on. And so let's talk for a minute. Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Maybe you hear evangelism and you hear about you hear in your mind like TV, televangelist, somebody who
flies on the private jet.
Does not all of them, I'm sure, but like they kind of swindle folks out of money. If you've heard like evangelical Christianity and it kind of has this negative connotation to some folks, it's folks that get up on street corners and scream at people who do, you said it earlier, what was it? Turn and burn.
Yeah. Turn or burn. Yeah. And it's very much so filled with like anger and a lot of times hate. And it's the feeling like I have to tell this person what they're doing is wrong. And I'm going to label that evangelism.
Yes, it's...
and it's turned a lot of people away.
Oh, yeah. You're terrible, horrible, no good. Come here quick. I have the solution. And it can be pretty dark. And I mean, it's not my preferred method. I don't think it's...
And it's not always the person on the side of the road. Maybe it's someone that you know.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's a constant conversation with someone. And you're like, hey, man, what do you want for lunch? And they're like, do you know that you're a horrible person and you need to turn? And it's like, dude,
Your body's a temple. You're like, I just want Wendy's, man.
I just want Wendy's.
Somebody who maybe is a little bit aggressive about their faith.
Yeah.
And I think even sometimes this specific kind of person we're talking about, they would say, well, no, I'm being loving by sharing this truth. And a lot of people have come to know Jesus through this
For sure.
aggressive method, but I don't think it's the right thing for most people. And so let's
Yeah.
get back to evangelism, which is simply telling people about Jesus. Why can it feel complicated?
I think right off the bat, it can feel complicated because not feeling qualified. And I like how we're starting to make the distinction from evangelist and evangelism, because we can tend to feel like I have to be this person that knows these things, has gone to school, has confidence. I have to be able to answer the questions. I have to be able to know how to respond. And we have this view of what it means to share the good news. It can cause a lot of fear. And I think it can kind of just stem from, I don't know if I feel good enough to do that. Or maybe you feel too far gone. Like the things you've done in your past, why would anyone want to listen to me?
Mm-hmm.
Why would anyone want to hear the good news I have to share? I've talked to a lot of people that one of the hardest things is to go back to their friends from maybe high school or middle school before they maybe knew Jesus, and to share Jesus with them or to share the good news with them, because they feel like, man, what are these people going to think? Or family members, you know? A lot of it's just the feeling of not feeling worthy.
Yeah. Or even fear of rejection.
Yes.
I'm putting myself out there. I'm going, can I tell you something that I believe? Because it's not just like, what if they reject this good news? It's what if they reject me?
Yes.
The fear of rejection, maybe not wanting to be pushy. Maybe especially if you came from a background where you really perceive Christians as being pushy or being aggressive, or you kind of look at that through that lens when it comes to others. Maybe you've heard them go, Christians are whatever. And so you're like, I don't want to be pushy.
Like, I don't want to be that guy.
Don't be
I
that
don't want
guy.
to be that guy.
That should be on a shirt. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
And so there's lots of reasons. I think we're kind of talking about why it's intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've stated the clear, like, why it feels complicated.
Yeah.
I'm not qualified. I don't know what to say. I don't even fully know what I believe. And so how do I articulate this?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't feel like it's my job. A lot of folks from different backgrounds, even within like maybe the Christian faith, or maybe you grew up Catholic or whatever, it's like you see that as maybe someone else's job. I'm not qualified.
True.
I need a pastor. I need a priest. I need somebody else's job to do this. It's not mine.
And I think there's so much uncertainty that goes into any conversation, right? And if you're going to a conversation with someone, you don't know what they're going to say. So if you don't feel like you know how to answer every single question, then it's going to be intimidating being able to go on that conversation with someone, which happens to everyone. Like, no one knows all the answers. Yeah. So
sometimes we initiate the conversation, but sometimes somebody else does. But it's not like they're like, tell me about Jesus. They're like challenging in like an argumentative way. And I would say like there's not it's not worth it not to not have the conversation, but to try to like defend aggressively.
A lot of times evangelism is just a moment. You know, it can just be a moment with someone on the airplane or someone in public at the HEB. When evangelism is done in a healthy way, it leads to good conversations, leads to moments that continue to happen.
So now we've talked, why is it complicated? Okay, so why does it matter? Why should I consider this in my life? Why should I make having conversations about Jesus something I prioritize in my life?
Yeah, I think first of all, it matters because you matter. Like, it matters because your voice, your story, what you've done, what you've experienced is important. And it matters because if we believe this good news, right, what Jesus has done for us, that there is a God that loves us so much that no matter what we've done, he is there for us. If we have the best news ever, we should want, and what I love is it should be from I have to, but I get to.
Yeah,
right? Absolutely. It's not the I have to go yell at people, do all this. It's no, I get to share the love of Jesus. When we talk about evangelism, God could, with a snap of fingers, like Thanos, right? Just everyone knows him.
Thanos.
Everyone knows. But instead, he chooses to use us, right? People that have messed up lives, all these different things, use us to be a part of a beautiful story, to have conversations. And you know what?
How incredible to be trusted like that.
Yes.
That's amazing. Anyway.
No, just like he sees us and he goes, I love you so much. I want to be there with you, help transform your life. And you know what? I'm going to empower you and encourage you to be that person for someone else. Like the best gift I've ever received. I want to tell people about it. And it's important and it matters because your story matters. Your friends matter. Your family. the random person at the grocery store, they matter. And sharing that good news with them is important.
Absolutely. There's a quote. I had to look it up while you were saying that. It reminded me of, it's Penn Jillette, an atheist. And he said, how much do you have to hate somebody to believe that everlasting life is possible and not tell them that? An atheist.
Yeah,
It's
from
like,
an atheist.
yes.
Wow.
He's like, if you believe this is the case and you don't tell people, how much must you hate them?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. And you go, I don't hate people.
Yeah.
I'm not that. Then I have to ask the question. This may be too deep of a question. Is it, you're like, well, I don't hate them. Then it's like, okay, well then how much do you believe in the life-changing power of the gospel of Jesus?
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, I certainly do not want to say, oh, you must not believe. But I mean, like,
Or you're a bad person if you haven't felt that. No, that's not what you're saying.
No. But do we have that faith where we truly believe that that Jesus is the answer? Like, are we convinced enough to go and tell people to go, okay, this is, you gotta, like, this is, can I tell you this? Can I share this with you? Can I model this? Can I on and on? Yeah.
And what's amazing is that right there, from people sharing that good news, is how Christianity is where it is today. Because 12 messed up, ordinary people who were with Jesus spread the good news, and it spread all across the world. And that's where we are today because of people that maybe were uncomfortable, but walked in a boldness and the ability to share because of how important it is, which I love, because Jesus cares for us so much that he empowers us to do that. Yeah. Which is awesome.
People need this. It matters because people are searching for hope.
Yes.
It matters because being forgiven matters. It's like, we can't overemphasize that. Like, we could spend the whole time just talking about that, but the purpose of this is to get really, really practical to impact your day-to-day. And part of that is, if you're somebody who follows Jesus, figuring out what it looks like to talk about that. Yeah. And so people are searching for hope. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you have that living inside of you.
Yes. And you have the opportunity to reach people in your unique influence that many people can't.
Yes.
And that right there is why it's important to get this and why it matters. And that's why God has entrusted us to speak that good news. Yes. Which is so beautiful. That love and that grace from Jesus is such an impactful thing that we should just feel that desire to share.
And so that's going to transition so well into what I want us to talk about next. But first, I want to bring up two things first. Okay. And the first is, if evangelism talking about Jesus feels intimidating, it's really, really important to know that it's not your job to save someone. It's not your job to say it perfectly. It's not your job to convince someone. That's that's God's work. That's the Spirit's work. But there is something that we can do and that we are called to do. Bottom line is that Jesus gave a great commission.
Yes. The Great Commission was one of the last things that Jesus said to his disciples. And I love that he could have said, it's like the fourth quarter in basketball or football. Like, you could say anything, but what he says is, I've given you this Great Commission to go to all nations, baptize, and make disciples. And to baptize means that you're reaching people that don't know Jesus yet, that don't know that good news, and you're evangelizing to them. That is the Great Commission. That is the final charge that Jesus gave his followers before he went back.
And you said it's like the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. The game was actually won. Yeah, like, this is good. Like the post. This is the post. Like, this is the locker room talk of like, y'all, we did it. Jesus, like, well, really, I carried this team. It's not important, but so let me bring this down. Ground level is that Jesus called us to go. It's like, go tell people what I have done. Go tell people the redemption that they can have. You've seen it. You've heard it. You've been here. Now go and do something with it. And I think our charge is the same. Whether you come and you sit in a church service and you come to know Jesus, you've been a follower of Jesus for 3 minutes or, 30 years. The command is go.
It's active.
It's active.
To do something.
And so at the end of the day, there's lots of reasons. We got to talk about Jesus because we know what Jesus has done for us. We got to talk about Jesus because other people need that. We got to talk about Jesus because it's significant. And, back to that quote, it's like, how much do you have to hate someone to have such great news and not tell them? And when we want to bring it down, like brass tacks, it's also because Jesus told us to. Yeah. Like, hey, everything's been said and done. Let me tell you right now, your job.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's done the work. Here's your job.
Yeah.
Go.
Mm. He said to all nations too, because at that time period, it was just in a certain area. So I love because that also speaks to no matter where you are, like go to all nations. Such a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
That shows that it's for all people.
Yeah. He didn't say, go tell Dave. I mean,
No.
like if you're Dave, like you should be told.
Jesus
cool,
loves
man.
you.
Jesus loves you, all the Daves.
Yeah.
But it's the go, and what's their view of the world was pretty limited.
Oh, yeah.
And imagine like Jesus is using language that would surpass their understanding for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, very cool. The work's done. Jesus did the work. Don't stress, man.
And
that's not on you.
And he says, I
Your
will be with you.
command is go. Oh, yeah. And he says, I will be with you.
He says, I will be with you. So not only is the game done, but he is still with us.
When he left, he said, I'm going to send an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to send an advocate. And that's the spirit that lives within us. It's not just like, hey, I did the work. Now you go do your work.
Yeah.
It's, hey, I did the work. I'm gonna be with you. I'm gonna go with you. But your command is to go.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like, oh man, now I have to be the person that goes across the world and do stuff in other countries, which is great. If someone's called it, that's awesome. But you can also look at that passage and kind of see it translated as you go.
Yeah. In
your everyday life, as you go to work, as you go, if there's any students listening, to school, as you go to your family function, share the good news. So it's not now you are now called to, and some people are, but it's not necessarily you're now called to go do this crazy thing all the way across the world. It's, hey, you're called as you go to share the good news because he is with us.
Yeah. And we see the local church form in the, in the years after Jesus, after the ascension. And we talked about this in episode 5. We really got into the early church, but it's not just go and leave where you're from and go tell people about Jesus, because you know what? There are people that need Jesus right here.
Yes.
I love the as you go.
Yeah.
As you go. And so that's perfect. And so
that's every day.
We kind of
every day.
Absolutely. Everyday truths.
Every day.
Welcome to the Everyday Truths podcast.
There we go.
That segues so perfectly. The as you go in everyday moments. You know, most people aren't called to be on a stage to tell people about Jesus. That's very few people. And can we just say, like, that is not the varsity at all? Because the people who stand on stages, they aren't in your workplace, they aren't in your school, they aren't anywhere. They're only really speaking to people who are willing to walk into a church. And that is a very specific and small group of people. Often they're not the people that necessarily need that message. And so the as you go has so much more to do with our everyday lives than it does with getting up and like being the evangelist.
Yeah.
Right? Like for every Billy Graham, there's millions of other people who have gone and led others to Jesus. Yes. For every name that you know, I could name off pastors. Do you know how many more thousands of people, millions of people there have to be that are doing it on the ground? Yeah. That are having a significant kingdom impact without a title, without a stage, without preacher hair. They're getting it done. And that's all of us. That's what we're called to do. And so let's talk about those everyday moments. And so let's just like really simply, what are casual ways to talk about Jesus?
I think one of the most natural ways I've seen is to share about the good news of what Jesus has done to you. And a lot of times it just starts as, man, this weekend was amazing. Like I had such a good time. I felt freedom. I felt peace. And I just happened to go to church and experience that, and it doesn't come from a hate-filled. It just comes from a joy that you've experienced, and now you can talk to someone. Yeah. I will say normally that comes from people that you're already in relationship with. Yeah. So normally that's the coworker, the friend that maybe doesn't like Jesus, doesn't kind of care about that type of thing. So you're wanting to share that with them.
Well, most of the time it's that they don't like Christians.
Yes.
Most people that find out who Jesus is, like I don't think I've met many people in opposition to Jesus, but yes.
It's because of how he's been represented. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like there's the different angles of one, sharing with someone that you already have a relationship with. But if we're talking with going, maybe you're at the grocery store, or I had an instance where I was at the gas station and I kind of felt like a prompting of just like, hey, go back in there. And I was like, what am I going to say? And I just said, hey.
You saw someone.
Yes.
In that,
in this instance, it was the cashier. It was the cashier who I felt like I was supposed to go back in and just pray for him. So I said, hey, I feel like I'm supposed to pray for you. and I had no idea what I was going to say. I knew I should just pray for them. So that's honestly can be a good kind of first thing of just, hey, can I pray for you? Oftentimes when you ask someone if they can pray for you, they'll share what's going on in their lives. And then it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation. And here's the thing that I'm just thinking of right now is if you're trying to view evangelism as I'm going to fix this person in one instance, then you're viewing it wrong. When you view evangelism as this is something that has so greatly impacted me, I just want to help someone. Then it helps you take that first step. So it can look like just praying for someone or just sharing your story.
I think as you were talking, I realized, there's two angles. Because there's, I think, I'll call them passive ways.
Okay. Yeah.
You're an optimist.
Yeah.
In really difficult circumstances. You make choices that maybe your coworkers don't make when everybody's frustrated or they're getting into it or whatever, and you make a choice. People see your joy. Yes. People see whatever. You live in a way that sparks curiosity.
Yeah, how you live your life, yeah.
And so in those moments, be somebody that's trustworthy. And so then when those opportunities arise, maybe somebody comes to you and says, I'm just really struggling here. And then you have this opportunity to go, hey, you know what? This reminds me of something Jesus said. This reminds me of something I heard at church. You know, last time there's this worship song I love to listen to, or whatever the thing is, or sometimes it's just listening, but there are those passive ways. Or be vulnerable. Let people see when you're hurting and how you're dealing with it. And so there's these passive ways of just like how you live your life, letting people know that you're for them, letting people know that you're trustworthy, and watching just what that does, and watch how it just brings about this curiosity in folks who are going, wait, that's different. Well, that's not what I expected.
Yes. And I think one of the best ways to share the good news, and this is not easy, but it's when you're going through trials, how you live your life. Not saying you have to act like everything's perfect and great, but I don't know if you've ever encountered someone who the situation they're going through and it's tough, but there's still a joy or there's still a calmness or something different about them. That shares Jesus with people.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. I love being around people like that because it's so difficult to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this some actually last time you were here because we talked about, your Riley
trials. Yeah.
Was in the NICU for a month.
Yeah. 35 days. Yeah.
And we talked a lot about James. And it's that, when people take to heart that consider it all joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Yes. Let perseverance finish its work so you can be whole and complete, not lacking anything. And so as you're in this process, as you follow that guidance, as one day at a time and one step at a time, people watch perseverance do its work in you. It is going to,
as you go,
spark a curiosity. And it's not because you're standing on, a chair yelling Jesus. It's not because you're pretending like everything's perfect. Yeah. It's not because you have it all together. It's just you're allowing God to continue to work in your life, and you're letting that spark a curiosity in others by the way that you are living. Yes. Now, I don't want to say it's passive because that's very intentional on your end, but it's also not standing up on a street corner yelling about hellfire and brimstone or whatever. And so that's so significant. So we're going to call those passive, even though they're not passive. And then let's talk active.
Yeah, having conversations.
Having those conversations, having that boldness. And they
go together. I think it's important that they can't go together.
Well, because if you've proven yourself untrustworthy.
Yes.
And then you decide to go and be bold with someone, why? They're not listening. You're a clanging gong, man. What is...
And there might be times where you've built trust with someone. It's been 20 years. You can say something now.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's good to recognize that there is times where we do have to follow that prompting and push back some fear. You're like, no, I'm just living it out. But it's like, yeah, you have been living it out. Great. But it's also time maybe in this. And that's why it's so hard to speak to every situation with such a broad statement, because every situation is different. Every relationship is different, but recognizing that there are both of those times, and a lot of times we'll have to decide and decipher which one is how to go about it.
Oh, 100%. And one's not an excuse for the other.
Yes.
You can't say, well, I told them about Jesus so I can live however I want. You could say, I'm living and I'm being a great model, but I'm not going to say anything. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And so this leads really well to our the next thing I want to talk about is how to share Jesus in everyday life, but then how to share Jesus with different people. Because I think it's really easy to make this blanket statement, but there are specific instances. I think a really, really practical example is like children.
Yeah.
all right, this is going to draw a really good black and white for us, is that children, you know, I'm not going to go in and be like, and then all of 1,000 of Solomon's concubines.
Yeah.
Actually, that story came up.
No.
And my son goes, what's a concubine? And I'm like, a girlfriend. He had lots of girlfriends, and you're only supposed to have one girlfriend. And he's like, oh, okay.
Nice.
Like, we're going to talk about biblical stories from like
their perspective. Yeah.
Their perspective. You know, you're going to use the storybook Bibles. You're going to, when you talk about and you share the love of Jesus with a young child. So that's a really clear example. And so, and let me go to another kind of simple. When you're talking to a parent or an elder or someone like that, there is a matter of like, don't come at somebody hot. Like, oh, you don't know this yet, or anybody really. Like, you can tailor what you're saying to different audiences. Imagine Paul writing to different audiences. He's not like copy paste and writing the same thing to every group. No, he's speaking to specific people about specific issues based on their life experiences, based on their understanding. And so there is something, if we're going to talk to people about Jesus, about tailoring what it is, not changing the truth, but really bringing it to them. Maybe another example is like coworkers. If you work in a professional environment, you need to show professionalism. If you're in a school environment, like it looks a little bit different. It looks, and so you do need to tailor that.
Which I know some teachers who have done amazing jobs, like amazing job, because they live it out so well. Yeah. And I love.
What a great example.
Yeah. Like, because teachers have such an amazing opportunity to reach students. And a lot of the teachers that I know do it so well because they're just like, hey, are you okay? Like, and oftentimes those students feel the safest around them. So then they start to ask questions. Yes. And then it starts to go from there. And that's something that's in many different professions, is the ability to live it out so people will become curious.
Kind of like it comes out of their very pores in the way that they live it out. And others, it's one of those passive ways, you know? Yeah. And it drives a curiosity.
Yeah. And that's why there's no professional, like there shouldn't be professional Christians, because like you can go live out your faith in your regular life. Like I think of my dad, who's an amazing example, right? At his work over the last 30 years, he started a Bible study there. And he's done amazing.
Isn't it a corporate environment? Like it's a big, I don't want to say the name of the place just because, but it is a huge.
But it took him over 20 years
nationally known or internationally known Fortune 100 company.
Yeah. And it took him years.
It's insane.
And guys came to him and said, hey, we'd like to start a Bible study. And they started it. And during COVID, they went on Zoom and they're still doing it. And it's so cool because he lived out his faith. And I can't tell you, there's been a lot of his friends from work that have come to church from that. But there's been also a lot of them that church happened there.
Man. Yeah. That's so cool.
I think he's just an amazing example. And he's been someone who I've really looked up to and how he's lived his life. It's the as you go. It's the as you live your life. You don't have to go and work at a church or work at a certain thing. You can just, as it just happens.
As we're talking about like how you talk to different people, sometimes it has nothing to do with necessarily words. Sometimes it's like, what good is it? It's from scripture. What good is it to tell somebody to be warm if you're not going to hand them a coat? Yeah. What good is it to say be full if you're not going to feed them? And so there's also something too. Sometimes the answer isn't looking at somebody who's in need and going, you need Jesus, and then like peace out. Yeah. There is something to showing up in really significant ways. I heard an amazing story today, and it was about Hurricane Harvey, and it was a church who they went in and like worked on people's houses, did like really difficult, gross work. And one of their congregants goes and sees it was a Muslim woman. He sees that she's buying like bleach and some other things that basically you would need to work on your house in the way that they were working on them. And so he goes up to her and he goes, hey, I see that you're getting this stuff. Like, do you need help with that? And she goes, oh no, it's amazing. This great church down the road, they came in and they did all that work and it was his church. And, and so just like this incredible, like that's cool. That they just showed up and they did something. Yeah. And sometimes there is something like of meeting people's needs and being there where they are. It has to do with showing up. And sometimes there's not a word that can be said to someone if you haven't already shown up and sat with them and been with them and all of those kinds of things.
And it takes time. And a lot of times it's just the consistency of saying, I'm going to be with this person. I'm going to talk with them. I'm going to get to know them. And this might not happen right away. It's just the consistency of showing up. I love how you put it. It's just being there for them.
Maybe you don't talk about Jesus at all, but there is this opportunity. There is this final moment. And I want to challenge somebody watching today, because I have a feeling you're going to interact with this, like, if not today, like so soon.
Yeah.
I want to challenge you here, because when you're there for someone, when you listen to someone, there's this moment right at the end where you have the opportunity to go, hey, before we go, can I pray for you?
Yeah.
Recently, I was giving somebody a hand that was having a hard time, and her need in this moment, this was somebody that she was going through some struggles, obviously, with addiction and things like that. And I ran into her at the grocery store, and she needed a hand. She needed some help. So I was helping her out and got her something to eat. And I'm about to leave. And my focus has been her health up to this point. Hey, have you eaten? Can I go get this for you? Do I need to, can I take you somewhere? It was when it's time for me to go. And I said, hey, can I pray for you? And that was the first time we had talked about Jesus, because she had a need that needed to be met first. Yeah. And so I think that's another way to evangelize. But there's just that moment right there at the end. Just say, can I pray for you? Yeah. I have agnostic and atheist friends that have come to me and shared things with me. And at the end, I always say, can I pray with you? And I can't remember a time where I was told no. And there's a moment, there's an opportunity in those moments of passive evangelism. Yeah. When you have that moment at the end, somebody shares something difficult, just ask if you can pray for them. Or if you're not comfortable in the moment, say, hey, I'm going to be praying for you.
Is there anything specific I can pray for?
Exactly. But I want to challenge you. Yeah. The moment's going to come. Moment. Find that moment at the end to just go, I can tell that you're really having a hard time with this. Can I pray with you?
Yeah. And if it's awkward, it's okay. Like, it will be awkward.
It's going to be.
And what's given me hope, and because this is something I still struggle with too. Like, there's times where I beat myself up, man, I should have prayed for that person. It's knowing that, and I love how it goes back to the Great Commission, because Jesus saying, I will be with you, and the Holy Spirit is with us. The advocate, the helper is with us. So there has been so many times where I'm like, I don't know what to say. And then I just have this conversation or this prayer, and God just shows up. And sometimes it's just a simple way. Yeah. To know that you are not in this alone. Yeah. That you are not in this alone, that he has not left you. He is with you. You matter. The person you're talking to matters. I love that challenge. Yeah. I'm going to take that challenge. Yeah. It's hard.
And it's something, there's something to being a good steward of the moments that we have. Yeah. Whether it's somebody that, if somebody will share their story with you and share how they're struggling, like, that is a privilege. Yeah. It really is. And we should show gratitude in those moments. And so let's be a good steward of those moments. Let's be a good steward of our relationships. Let's be a good steward of the doors that are open for us. And even if it's a 10-second opportunity for you to roll down your window and talk to a homeless person, let them know that you see them. Let them know that they're not invisible. Be a steward of that moment. Yeah. Let somebody feel seen and heard. And so, and the last thing we haven't talked about, and I want to keep it so brief because I don't want to get it overcomplicated, but one of the best ways that you can talk about Jesus is by telling your story. Yeah. You see somebody struggling, maybe even the way that you've struggled. Yeah. Talk about how you got through it and how Jesus, the difference that your church community, your friends, your family, your faith, your whatever, what a difference it made. Yeah. Share that Bible verse that stood out to you. Share where you came from.
A really good format, or if you're like, how do I do that? Could be before Jesus, I was like this, and now I am like this. It can just be a simple, before Jesus, I struggled, and now I still struggle, but I know that there's hope,
Let's talk just for a minute about the impact that it has on you when you will take the time, the energy, have the boldness to model and to talk about Jesus with others, because there is a benefit to you too. Yeah.
Well, and what I love about it is the good news, and this is why, like, I have that kind of passion for evangelism, is because the good news never stops being good. Mm-hmm. And if it never stops being good, then that means it's always transforming and working in our lives. Yeah. And which is why when I get up and talk to a lot of people, I want my main message to be that, because we can continue to remind ourselves of who we are in Christ, remind ourselves of that good news. And there's something special that happens whenever we walk in that. We use the word obedience, but we walk in those promptings. There's something that God does in our lives and it's being a part of something bigger than us, because it's so easy to get caught up in, what's going on in our life. And many people are busy, completely understand that. But there's something powerful when you recognize that there is a God out there that loves you and desires to have you be a part of this bigger mission than you could even understand.
Yes.
And
you're trusted.
Yes.
When you take the time to say it out loud, it cements something in you.
Yeah.
It continues to solidify who God is.
He's still good
in you, and reminds you, does all of those things, because how often do we, if we're somebody who we've received this good news, you're right, it's easy to forget that it's good. And so it helps you remember. And something that was said once, and I was like, it is never left. I think about it. I think daily, because it's so significant for me. It's like the more we trust God, the more trustworthy he will prove himself to be.
It's good.
And so even in these little moments where you're like, okay, God, like, I don't know if I should do this, but I feel like I need to say something. It's like, it's the more we learn to trust, the more trustworthy he becomes, that we can see him, that he becomes in our life. Not that he changes, but we can recognize that. And so it's also, there's something too, it's deepening your faith too. Yeah. It's helping you grow too. Yeah. It's helping you not just to be a consumer of what it is that God has offered through Jesus, and it is helping you to be a vessel and a steward to go and to share that with others. Yeah. And
it's something to grow in. Like we talk about sharing.
Yeah.
We talk about sharing with kids, right? One of the best places to learn about the Bible is talking to kids, because you're explaining to them at a level where they're at. So when you're able to, over time, have conversations and pray with people, what we talked about in the beginning of not feeling qualified, over time we just begin to learn more. And again, we know that you don't have to know all of these things. You can start where you are. Yeah. And God uses all of those to help grow us in knowledge, also that we can share that.
Yeah. So last thought, really quick. So I would say that the first time that you offer to pray with somebody, the first time you tell somebody about Jesus, is probably the hardest time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That passive part, like, that's happening, and keep striving, keep working, keep doing those things. But the first time you have to say those words, can I pray with you? Yeah. The first time you say, hey, can I tell you what's made a difference in my life, is the hardest one. And so today, if you're listening and you feel like you've never done that before, here's the challenge. Go do that for the first time. Yeah. Listen to someone and ask if you can pray with them. Yeah. Share your story of how you used to struggle where they're struggling, but where you found freedom. It's the first hurdle. And I think maybe today is the day for you to do that.
Yes.
It's time. You don't have to have all the answers. Go share with somebody what you do know. And if you feel like you don't know anything, go pray. Go pray for somebody. I was going to give some like simpler things, but no, I want to challenge you like that. It's time. It's time. If you've never done it, it's time. Yeah. See what happens. And I don't say that lightly. That's the command. Good. I'm not making that up. Yeah. This isn't Sherry says, I think you should. Yeah. This is the commission we've been given. And if, I think it's time. I think it's your day. And if you've done it before, hey man, it's time to do it again.
Do it again.
Let's go. Let's do it today. Let's do it together. In this, everyday truths community, because this is a truth to live out today and every day. So let's go make it happen. Hey, there's somebody that just popped in your head, man. I bet you anything. There's somebody that just popped in your head. I'm just trying to evangelize now, but somebody that's popped in your head. Good. All right, man, let's make it happen. Let's do it together. And you know what? Comment, share on here. Like, what was intimidating about it? Maybe what's scary? So we can pray for you. Tell us what's scary so we can pray for you. Who did you talk to? What was the impact? How did you feel? Share that. Let's spur each other on in this, because you know what? Today's the day. Let's go.
And there are people that are praying and you're the answered prayer.
Oh, dang.
You going to talk to them is the answer to their prayer, even if they call it a prayer or not. It's the answer to them crying out. There has been countless times where I've seen, heard stories of someone who talked to someone and that person said, you don't know that I was just crying out to God, and you coming up and just asking me for prayer is what I needed. I felt hopeless, and I didn't know where I was going to turn. Yeah. I didn't know who I could talk to. Or maybe it's a coworker who's about to quit, and you just feel like and they're like, man, I didn't tell anyone this, but you just telling me that there's hope. There's just so much, and it's so easy to think, why me? Why me? Why me? Because God loves you. because
Yeah.
God has a call on your life, and he desires to use you, not because we have to, but because we get to. I love that challenge.
Yeah.
Today's the day.
Yeah. And man, you may not be the answer to their prayer. You might be the answer to their grandma's prayer that's been praying for
real,
their whole
though.
lifetime. Man, I've heard so many great stories.
For real.
So I've never done this before, ending an episode, but I
Yeah.
just feel like we need to pray for folks that are hearing this.
Yeah.
And so
That's good.
I'm just going to start, and I just want you to
Okay.
throw something in there, and yeah. And so, God, I just thank you for anybody and everybody who's listening. And I pray right now that you would just put someone in their heart, or that you would give them a boldness to share this good news with them, that you would help them to live out their faith in a way that makes people curious, God. And so right now, I just pray that for each of us, you would start to prepare our hearts for what it is that you have for us, to give us the boldness to go out and today it's time, and to go and to talk to someone about Jesus today, to pray with somebody, God. I feel like today's the day, God. And so we just thank you for who you are.
God, I pray for a confidence, and I pray for, like Sherry said, that boldness for whoever's listening to recognize and understand that they are called by you, that no matter what they have done, no matter what they feel like has happened in the past, that they can step into a conversation, can step into being a part of something that is much larger than ourselves, in sharing that good news. And God, I pray that you bring up someone in their minds right now that allows them to know who it is you desire for them to talk to, or maybe just start to have a conversation. God, I pray for that confidence and that boldness. And God, I pray that, as you said, your Spirit, right, Jesus, how you would be with us. And I pray that you were with every single person listening or watching right now, and that they know that they are not in this alone. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. All right, y'all.
Good.
Today's the day.
Today's the day.
Let's make it happen.
Let's go.
We'll see you later. I'm so glad that you have listened or watched the Everyday Truth podcast this week. This conversation was such a blessing to me, and I hope it was to you too. If you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed to the Everyday Truths podcast, whether that's on Spotify or on YouTube. If you enjoy these conversations, make sure to go and rate and like and share all of these different things. It just goes a long way to getting this ministry up off the ground. Everyday Truths has only been around for 6 months. All right, we're just in our infancy. And so your support means so much. If you want to get daily encouragement, you can also do that on Instagram and TikTok. I will put all of those handles below so that you can follow along and you can get everyday truths that you can like, share, and be inspired by every single day. And so glad you joined us. We have another great conversation coming next week. So we'll see you then.